All right. Thank you, Jared. We've got a good crowd tonight. Thank you all for coming out. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:01 PM. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown. Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 9/13. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 9/12, and the final agenda and packet were made available online on 9/12. Just a few reminders for the audience. Please be sure you've signed in with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please fill out the form and submit it to me prior to that agenda.
All right, and next item on the agenda then is public comment. And as Carla just said, submit a form to her and we have 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes for public comment. Do we have anybody that would like to make a public comment?
We have,
And before you start with your list, for those who are participating online, I see we have a couple of folks. Click raise hand and we will bring you in the order those are raised.
the first one up is Ed Schlappy at 790 Westbridge Trail in Waunakee.
Hi, Ed. And when you get to the microphone, if you don't mind pressing the button so it turns green. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ed Schlappy, 790 Westbridge Trail, Waunakee, Wisconsin. I'm here to talk about Hillenbrand Road again. It's a real problem and I'm just wondering if we're getting any progress on helping with the two other townships. It seems like Waunakee is going to have to push the issue with the townships, even though Waunakee doesn't own the road. But us Waunakee taxpayers use that road. I hope that means something. So I just talked with Mr. Fredericks and he gave me an update, which was very good. And I just want to know if there's anything the board can do to push this issue. And that's really all I want to say. So have any of you ever driven out on Hillenbrand Road? You know what it's like? It's dangerous, hard on vehicles. And I know that 113 will open up and the traffic won't be going as far that way, but if we take all the traffic off of Hillenbrand, we're just pushing all that traffic over to 113 and the roundabout, which isn't good either. And we have to drive further to go to the west side of Madison. So anything you can do to help, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And as it's not on the agenda, we can't make a comment on it. But since it's not on the agenda, we can't comment on it. But if you reach out to any of us individually, we're happy to chat. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. And next person.
I don't see any raised hands and I have no further comment cards.
All right. We'll close public comment then at 6:04. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Do we have anything we would like pulled from the consent agenda?
I'll pull number 5.
All right, thank you. Number 5, the approve the resolution recognizing National Hispanic Heritage Month will be pulled. The remainder of the items, do we have a motion to
I'll
pass?
approve the remainder. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Item carries. And number 6, approve resolution recognizing National Hispanic Heritage Month. Aaron, would you like to say something about this?
Yeah, I had asked staff to put this on our agenda. Thank you guys for making it happen so quickly too. By the time I called back to see if you need anything, you would email me. I just think it's a great way. It started yesterday, goes to October 15th. And so great way to just like honor and celebrate the contributions of our Hispanic community, both in the country, but in Waunakee in particular. We have just so many amazing community members and businesses and areas of our community that are thankful for all the ways they make Waunakee strong. So yeah, I just wanted us to recognize it a little more than the consent agenda. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very glad you brought it forward. And I'm glad that we're recognizing more than just in the consent agenda. Do we have any comments we would like to make as a group? Anyone? No,
Kristen?
yes.
I can note that when we post the resolution tomorrow, assuming the board passes it, we will simultaneously be posting a Spanish version. We had this translated. Just got that hot off the press here today or yesterday, something like that. And I will also give you just a heads up, a sneak peek to something that you'll see in a budget proposal before you. One document is not it's not a cheap endeavor for translation. And I'm in discussions with the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection about possibly partnering in staff and resources for bilingual organizational support. So you can expect in the next month or so, you'll be hearing some discussion and proposal on that to advance our work in this area.
Thank you very much. It's been 20 or 30 years since I've spoken Spanish, so I will not attempt to read it in Spanish when the time comes. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution recognizing National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th, 2024.
I'll second. Go ahead. All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, would it be an appropriate time for me to read the resolution? All right. Resolution recognizing Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas during National Hispanic Heritage Month, we honor and celebrate the abundant contributions of Latinos internationally, nationally, statewide, and locally. During this month, we salute the more than 62 million Latinos who make our nation strong every day. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month began as Hispanic Heritage Week in 1968 and expanded to cover a 30-day period in 1988, with September 15th being selected as the starting point to honor the anniversary of independence of Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Mexico, Chile, and Belize also celebrate their Independence Days on September 16th, 18th, and 21st, respectively. Whereas Latinos have helped chart America's course since our start as doctors and engineers, artists and entrepreneurs, and leaders in science, business, labor, government, and military, and across grassroots movements. Whereas the state of Wisconsin is home to more than 447,000 Hispanic Latino Americans, according to the 2020 census data, with deep roots that can be traced across the Americas, indigenous communities of Latin America, Africa, and beyond. Whereas the village of Waunakee recognizes all facets of society, Latino Wisconsinites have, both past and present day, helped build our state as we know it and shaped our social, political, and economic landscapes. Whereas we also recognize the persistent disparities and disproportionate challenges that the Latino communities face and commit to working towards a better future for all. And whereas whether their ancestors have been here for generations or if they are amongst our newest residents, we recognize that Hispanic heritage is American heritage, and our brothers and sisters in the Hispanic American community represent a rich history of country and culture. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Village Board recognizes September 15th, 2024 through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month, and reaffirms that the Village of Waunakee is committed to achieving equity and inclusion throughout the entire community. So, thank you for being here to celebrate. Those of you that are here to celebrate. Erin, thank you for bringing us forward. All right, and we are glad to commemorate the month. All right. Next up then is reports and announcements. So first item on the agenda, Parks and Rec Committee was canceled. Public Works Committee.
Public Works met on September 5th and we discussed the 5-year plan, which will be coming to the board, probably the next board meeting. And I am happy to say that we had a citizen comment, which we rarely have. And the woman who came was concerned about the situation on South Street and Kingston Way up by the schools. She said there was her son, who's a bigger build, older high school student, could get across easily, but as she sat there in her car, she watched probably a young freshman, much smaller built, trying to cross the road, and nobody was stopping for that young person. So Bill and his staff decided to replace the old faded stop sign with new stop signs with flags. They placed a slow children sign at the intersection. And then the Waunakee Public Schools sent out a letter notifying parents that this isn't a slow down for children area. So hopefully these things will be effective in the future. And like I said, I was very happy to have a citizen come and provide public comment and for the staff to work with the high school, and we got this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyla. Next up, Plan Commission.
Took up 4 items at Plan Commission. The first one, we approved a 900-foot maximum size for accessory buildings. The second one was related to beekeeping ordinances. That will come back to the Plan Commission again. Third one was a recommendation to contract with Dane County Planning and Development to update the housing chapter of the village's comprehensive plan. We decided to hold off on that. And the fourth one was a discussion around requiring Plan Commission to have official Waunakee.com email addresses. And I think the village attorney will be happy to hear that we said, yes, that was a good thing.
Excellent. Joint Plan Commission. Do we have anything to report from Joint Plan Commission?
We did meet for the first time since April. There were 2 things on the agenda, and it was more of a cleanup thing. Making sure that the keeping of chickens ordinance and the exterior lighting ordinance were consistent within our own code and in the joint planning area.
Excellent. Thank you. Tourism Committee. It's on the list.
That's
but
also
didn't-
me. We heard a presentation from Discover Wisconsin about some potential marketing opportunities that they could provide to us. And that was pretty much the entire meeting.
All right. All right. Create Waunakee.
Yeah, we met last Thursday. Lots of events coming up. The biggest one is the Artisan Market on October 5th at Schumacher. Lots of exciting returning vendors and new vendors there. We are getting ready to paint one of the plows again, so partnering with the Public Works crew. I think the winner was just announced today. Which is a great partnership too with the schools and some local teachers. There's some grocery getaways. I think it's happening right now till 7. So we're partnering with Piggly Wiggly to do these little getaways, and it's an art project with live music at the Pig. And then yesterday was the Art on Main auction. I was out of town, but do you have any updates?
They all were sold, I think, in total, 10 total pieces. I think we raised $4,700. So they went pretty well.
Wow, that's great. All right, and then next up is the Community Development Authority. We met last Wednesday. We reviewed the same proposal that Plan Commission reviewed for Dane County Planning and Development. We asked for some modifications. There was a heavy public engagement component that overlaps with what we will be doing for comp plan. If we can remove that and have some deliverables on that project that don't involve public engagement, we are hopefully going to entertain a partnership to update some of the housing information. Second thing we did is we updated the application to the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund to provide for an emergency provision. Some of the items that people are requesting, like HVAC replacement and whatnot, really can't wait for our triennial review. So we modified that. We booted the housing update to the October meeting and then spent the bulk of the meeting reviewing 7 applications for the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund, all scored within the criteria that allowed us to disperse funds to each of the applicants. So we have a total disbursement this go round of $42,000 for repairs that range from everything from porch replacement to roofing to window replacement. Some really great projects that'll be going on across the village then. Next up, EMS Commission.
EMS Commission met last Thursday for just normal updates. We have the study that's ongoing with the city of Middleton through the Wisconsin Policy Forum that's about the operating efficiency of Middleton, Waunakee, and potentially combined EMS district. They went through and they established common elements for how they're going to define metrics. So each district defined like response times differently. So now that they're all on the same page, they'll be moving forward with the study work there, and they should probably begin interviews soon if they haven't already with staff and then with the board. The other major item that's on there is the first draft of the second draft of the budget was read. Of note for the public, there is an increase this year in the village's share of 15.5%. That equates to just a little over $100,000 in increased assessment. We are moving from 67% of the district cost to 67.5% of the district cost based off of population changing between the five municipalities. Excuse me, the six municipalities. There is some of the cost is mainly behind employee wages. When we negotiated the contract with the union in year one, they took a 0% raise, so there was no immediate impact. So this is a scheduled raise to employee wages of about 10% in the first year. So of course, that comes with that more budgeting for overtime and some additional budgeting for part-time employees as well. It's all what was calculated in with the negotiation on the contract. The next meeting will take place in October. It is going to get, I believe, a full notice, multiple notices, because I think it has to get a class 1 notice because we're finally doing we're finally doing our annual meeting as we were supposed to be doing for years under our agreement. So if you see that in the newspaper, that's what it's about. We highly encourage the public to come and give comments. It's also when they can talk about anything with the EMS district, not just the budget. It's kind of similar to what the school district does when they do their setting meeting, except for they don't vote for it. It'll just be the district that still votes. But we hope people show up.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any other committees, boards, or commissions that weren't listed? They're ready to report? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to our regular business items. We do,
Did you have announcements section
oh,
on there?
other announcements. Do we have any other announcements? Thank you. Oh, Todd's got two. Thank you for reminding me.
Yep. One, I just want to note that Bill and I were kind of doing a project drive around earlier today and surprised when we happened on 113 and saw that a good majority east-west lanes heading north of the village already received some pavement. I think might have happened over the weekend. But they seem to be rocking and rolling out there. We're also glad we got some collaboration with the state on approving some additional business sign to help with access that was of concern to business. So you might have seen a few more signs. And then we also saw that the state quickly approved a reminder about the 55-hour speed limit to the west of the village that had a speed reader on it, and that to give extra notice as people are approaching that intersection of Hellenbrand and 113. Not 113, Hellenbrand and 19. The other thing I want to mention is that she probably saw me. Did you see me do this?
No.
I took something out of your office. Our fine village clerk, Carla Endres, she doesn't like to toot her own horn a lot, but at the clerks conference, the Wisconsin Clerks Conference, she was awarded the 2024 President's Award of Excellence. We have an excellent village clerk.
Thanks.
No, you're gonna have to pay me. Anyway, so that's all I got.
That's fantastic. Congratulations, Carla. Yeah, very much deserved. Very much deserved. All right, any other announcements that we have? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. And I see we're here, so we'll go as ordered. Originally, we were thinking of changing it, but if you don't mind, Robert, going first. First item on the agenda is discuss and take action on fire organizational review and future needs analysis by Robert Whitaker of McMahon Associates. So you'll recall a couple of weeks ago, we saw the presentation of the fire study, and tonight was our opportunity to ask questions. Todd gathered questions ahead of time and I believe forwarded all of them to you.
Correct.
And so that's where we'll start tonight.
And I can share too, Kristen, just so everyone is aware. After your last meeting, I did provide all the materials, information, links to the presentation from our YouTube channel to a number of groups, including the fire board, the fire association, the village board members, as well as all of the towns that are involved in the department. So the clerk and the elected leadership and administrative leadership at the town of Westport, Springfield, and Vienna, right? Those are three. So they all received that information and a request to submit questions, concerns, comments to our consultant ahead of time so he could be prepared to provide those responses. So all those offers were made. I think Robert received a few responses, and those that I had heard over the course of the process, I also kind of relayed so he was aware of what we were hearing. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Floor is yours, Robert.
Awesome, thank you. So I did, like Todd described, I received about 25 to 30 questions for the report. So the common questions, there were several that were the same. I combined and made them into one. So I do have a slide for each question. I'm more than happy to get into more detail as we go. I will leave it to you for the format if you want to have additional questions or however you prefer as the president to handle that. So.
I think we'll hear your presentation, and then if we've got additional questions for follow-up, that's all right. We'll ask
Okay.
it at that time.
So one of the questions, and we commonly hear this, is were the consultants working on the project architects and engineers? And one of my frustrations about our logo is it says architects and engineers. So the simple answer is no. We do. The McMahon has multiple divisions. One of them is public safety and emergency management consulting. The three team members that primarily worked on this project were myself. I'm a current fire chief in a department in Southeast Wisconsin. Kevin Clone, who recently retired from a joint fire department in Northeast Wisconsin in the Appleton area, and Jerry Kudek, who just recently retired as the fire chief in West Bend. Second question was, did the consulting team get the sense the Village of Waunakee initiated the report to create some sort of power play on the fire district? I never got that. The sense I got in our team, I talked to all the other two team members, was that the village was interested in long-term planning and wanted to know what its costs and service impact were for the future. There are some recommendations in the report about achieving additional voting authority, but that came from the consulting team, not from any of the village staff. We never heard that in our discussion. Is the report suggesting the fire district conduct a full financial audit? The background to the question is there is a requirement in the agreement between the municipalities to have a financial audit done annually. The Village of Waunakee does a partial audit for its own audit. We are recommending a full audit be done for the entire district, not just on the village's behalf. I think am I hitting the wrong button here?
Jared's moving around.
Okay, we're good now.
Don't get confused.
All right. What is the reason the report is recommending creation of a fire commission? So the statute that we cite in the report that we feel is applicable here is 61.65 sub 2 sub B 2, which says each village with a population of 5,500 or more that creates a joint fire department with another municipality shall create a joint board of fire commissioners with that municipality to govern the joint department. The authority of the board or the joint board of commissioners is detailed in 6213. Now, just for those of you who get into statutes, chapter 62 is cities, just so not to get confused. The chapter does in 61, which is villages, does refer you to 62, even though 62 is about cities only. So the joint board of commissioners would have the authority to appoint the fire chief, confirm the appointment of subordinates. So in other words, assistant chief, deputy chief, lieutenant, captain, whatever rank you may call, and take disciplinary action against the chief and or his or subordinates. The number of joint commissioners on the joint commission is determined by the municipalities participating in the joint department. That's under 61.65. And the village president and town chairperson appoint citizens to the joint fire commission. So a couple of sub points there, but the appointees are appointed by the village. So in other words, Waunakee would appoint, you would appoint. Some municipalities, I don't know your specific ordinances, require then confirmation by the board. Same thing for towns and cities. It just depends what the local ordinance requires. Why hasn't the district or member municipalities been penalized for not having a commission? I don't know the answer to that. My assumption is there hasn't been a complaint. In my research, the complaint would be handled by either the State Attorney General's office or the Dane County District Attorney. What are the downsides to having a fire commission? So this is a more editorial response, not a factual response. Depends on who you ask. The opinion of the consulting team is that it's not an option, it's required. Commission is to appoint the chief and his or subordinates. Under the current fire district structure, the firefighters elect the chief, the promoted officers of the department, and approve new members. So the downside is I guess in the eyes of the beholder. The positive of the commission is that they represent the community in selecting the chief, in doing disciplinary promotions and things like that. Updating the fire district agreement question. What are the steps for possibly seeking a mediated solution to updating the fire district agreement before a party withdraws from the district? I'm going to cite, there's probably some question regarding how I understood this question was, this is based on the fact that if there wasn't a voluntary agreement with the other municipalities to make some sort of amendment to the current agreement, which as you may recall, the current agreement really doesn't have a provision for amendments in it. It's if you read it very literally, in my opinion, is you quit if you don't like, you leave if you don't like what's there. So a mediated solution is encouraged. I've seen it done in several joint departments in the state. The department I worked for once used a mediator to mediate a solution or mediate an issue in the agreement. Several departments in the state that have done it. In fact, I know Trustee McPherson mentioned the Wisconsin Policy Forum. They've done it for several departments as part of their contracted services. The mediators solve similar issues. Suggested steps in our opinion is identify the issues that needing mediation, issue an RFP for parties interested, do the interviews and review the submission, select a finalist, and work with that mediator to conduct fact finding and then work with the parties. It's been successful in other municipalities. I'm aware of one department they're currently working in now in Waukesha County, joint department on mediating a solution. What concerns does McMahon have if the village were to withdraw from the district? I would not support, in the end, withdrawal as your first effort. I think joint fire and EMS agencies are where we'll see more of in the state, not less of. There are concerns, though, understandably, in joint departments where there are sort of the larger player and then some smaller players as far as authority, budgeting, things like that. So we do support that and feel it's a best practice. However, cooperation and compromise between all parties is needed. So in other words, whether you're in a relationship, you're in a business relationship, a personal relationship, compromise and cooperation is always needed if you're going to move forward. Not every member of the department. What are the concerns? You have members that don't rely, or members of the department that don't rely on that as their sole source of income. So to put it simply, people can walk away somewhat easily. And you don't have a staff that's paid and making their career or making their living doing this. So to walk away from something that you're not getting paid for to pay for your mortgage or pay for your meals is easier than it is to walk away from something that you're not getting paid for. So that's a concern we would have. I did not sense that. I think you have a committed team here. In fact, we were really impressed with the commitment of the fire department and its members. The village, but I should mention, we've seen it in other places. That's why it's brought up. The village of Waunakee, if it elected to create its own department, would be required to fund 100% of equipment and operations. We did a brief evaluation of what that would look like. You're currently paying 70%. There probably is some equipment you may not need the quantities of to do your own operation. You would have an opportunity to potentially seek contracts with other municipalities to have a revenue source to make up some of that money or all. But it is something as far as financial planning that you should be prepared for, that the assets that you would receive may need to be supplemented if you were to withdraw from the district. the division of those assets probably requires a professional to put a value on those assets. So there's a cost to that. So we identify that as a concern. And from your partners in the joint department now, they would have to find potentially another source for fire protection. So your neighbors would maybe need some assistance there. Who would McMahon recommend update the employee handbook, and what would the process be to do so? Employee handbooks, I think probably the village, I'm sure, has one. They're complicated because you have a very different group of employees. You have part-time employees. You have full-time employees of the fire district. So you need to have someone that understands our wage, overtime, benefits, WRS, how many hours you put in for it before you get to WRS to work through that. A consultant, human resource or labor attorney is probably be our recommendation. Some insurers do provide support on personnel manuals and handbooks. I'm not sure who you mean. I know you have municipal insurance. I don't know who the fire department is insured by or the district, but they may provide some support. It does require, as far as a process, input of the board. It's an issue that what do we want to provide our employees? It's not cut and dried. What level of benefits? How do we want to provide those? And then the board ultimately needs to approve that. So there's interaction between whoever does that work and the board. Previous fire district budgets have included funds to hire additional fire inspectors. Are those funds, it should say, being held in reserve by the district, or have they been spent on other needs? Could those funds be used to supplement hiring of a full-time chief in the future? So we did review budgets back to 2019. The budgets from 2019 to 2023 included funding some level of a second fire inspector position. The 2024 budget did not. It was removed. If the budget district board approved, those funds could be used to ease in a full-time chief. Additional details are in the next slide. So in 2019, there was $21,000 for a second inspector that was not filled. At the end of the year, a contribution in excess of $21,000 was made to the fund balance. So the assumption was those funds were put in the fund balance. 2020, $42,000 was budgeted for the position. $478 that year withdrawn from the fund balance. So it was likely used for other needs at the time. 2021, $42,000 for a second position that was not filled. A contribution in excess of $42,000 was made to the fund balance. 2022, $42,000 for a second position that remained unfilled. Again, a contribution in excess was made to the fund balance. 2023, $42,000 for a second inspector that was not filled. 2024 budget documents, when we did the study, we still didn't have the final financials for the year, but it showed a projected contribution in excess of that being made to the fund balance. And like I said, in the 2024 budget, the position wasn't funded. So there would be, based on reviewing the documents, there'd be an assumption that there is money in the fund balance that came from those allocated positions. Not to say that there were other prioritized needs that in those years that they were used for. So the answer back to the question was, I think they're probably, one of the, how I took and understood the question was, could those funds be used to phase in a full-time chief position because of the financial impact to the district? And I would assume that there's a fund balance there. How that gets managed, I would say, is up to the board. What is McMahon's opinion on limiting the search for a full-time chief to existing members of the fire district and not open it to external candidates? I'd have an opinion. The legal answer is the commission gets to decide that once that's formed. The commission and the board would need to first jointly decide minimum qualifications for the position that would be included in the job description that's created. Common qualifications for a chief are at minimum bachelor degree, fire officer 1, and instructor 1 certifications. We did not conduct a full evaluation of all the members of the department based on their qualifications. We did a larger sort of, we looked at certifications. We didn't necessarily look at degrees. I would encourage, if there were good internal candidates that meet the qualifications, to allow them look at that first. I always encourage, if there's quality candidates inside, to look at them. But I think, to there's probably need to be prepared to look outside also. What is an approximate cost to hire an external search firm of the chief? For a chief, that really depends on what the desired community level input is. Some communities that I've worked with in the past want multiple sessions where residents can come and talk to the candidates, meet them in person. Other communities say just get applications and really help us with interviews. And so that anywhere between 8,000 to 20,000 is what I would expect. 20,000 would be on the high side and would be a pretty intensive process. I will just tell you that's on the higher side of numbers I've seen. What would a process and timeline be to hire that full-time chief? Again, the commission's responsible to determine the process, consider up to a year to accomplish the following items. And it's not just part of the hiring, but to get to the point where you're hiring, in our opinion, the chief or a full-time chief, you first need to get your fire district agreement updated. Because the current agreement, if the position of the board is they want to implement the commission, which I think is a positive, which is what needs to get done. You first need to create that, ensure the job description's there and ready to go. Creation of the process by the commission, advertising, application review, assessment center is common in a lot of positions like this, and interviews, and then appointments. So again, at least a year to get through that. The first 2 bullet points probably being at least 6 months to get that just done itself. For any reason a full-time chief should not be considered. We do feel it's in the best interest to move forward with a full-time chief in the near future, not necessarily saying 2025, but in the short-term future. Question on the exhaust removal system is the suggested cost of $170,000 in the report before or after the grant contributions. That's the total cost before grant contributions. A lot of times the FEMA grant that we suggest in there pays 90% of the total cost. So it's a 10% match. What is the source of frustration from firefighters about being dispatched to drive Waunakee area EMS ambulances? So when we did this, a lot of the interviews, this was in spring of 2024. There was a period in March where in talking to the fire department and EMS, that there was a week where they got dispatched 6 times to assist EMS. I think that maybe led into some of the frustration. My understanding is that has been worked through and is not as frequent from talking to everyone involved. But I think that may have been I'll call it a trigger for lack of better words, of the point of discussion was if this is the norm, this is going to be a challenge moving forward. Is the recommendation to implement duty groups an urgent need for the district? We don't feel it's urgent. You, as I've said before, you get a great turnout of firefighters for your calls. And duty groups, our thought on duty groups was it limits the number of people who sometimes you feel you have to go. And if you're assigned, this is your day to be on call, some of that I have to go doesn't exist. It was a solution that we wanted to offer. Does it need to happen immediately? No. I think ultimately it's probably a good idea as call volume increases and some of those calls are lower acuity calls and you don't need 20 people coming to the fire station for some of those calls. Did McMahon review all fire inspections as part of the study? We did not do a full check every inspection record. No. We did a randomized review. We were encouraged right about the time we did our evaluation. The State Department of Safety and Professional Standards, who's the governing authority on fire inspections in the state, had just done a review of the district and gave them a passing grade. So we'd normally just do randomized reviews. There's not a requirement that every inspection be done under state statute. It's, I believe it talks about like a substantial amount or a majority or something like that. I don't remember the exact words. But we did feel that they were in compliance. And at the time also, there's and I'm assuming they're still in this transition of records management between firehouse records management and image trend, which makes understandably a challenge in any organization. Automatic aid. So this was a recommendation that the department should consider automatic aid agreements. So there's, for a refresher on background, there's mutual aid, which is a broad term. Mutual aid is one department requests help from the other. Normally, mutual aid is a request from someone that's responding or on scene. You may hear the term MABUS used. That's the mutual aid box alarm system. That's a procedure to request mutual aid. That's the statewide recognized system. Automatic aid is like I'll call it an enhanced mutual aid. So in other words, the automatic aid is the dispatch center at the time they take the phone call decides they're going to need more help than just what they have available. So they dispatch multiple departments to a scene to get all that help rolling. So the question is it unusual for a department or district like Waunakee to have no automatic aid agreements in place? And it's not. Our recommendation is simply for an improvement. They're becoming much more common and not only in the industry, but in talking to when we did interviews in other chiefs in Dane County, they're using them more frequently. And we're seeing them used a lot more frequently in communities where they rely on volunteer paid on call departments, because there is a lag time to get from the time of call to people in the station to get on the road. So now if you wait for the first department to get on scene and say, we need help, you've got a longer lag. So this gets everyone moving at the same time. Records management system. Does the department have the capacity to implement a new records management system? Whether you're a small department or a large department, a single person can't do it by themselves. It is a huge effort. It's a team effort. The district would need a team to do that. With a solid team, you can do it, even with part-time paid on call with the assistance of your full-time person, who probably would be more like a project manager. And you need a records management vendor that supports it and works with the team. So it would be a challenge as for a single person to do that on their own. Can you clarify the information included in the report about response times? Yeah, response times are, there's two charts in the report on response times. The first chart is looking at the first arriving unit. So we went to Dane County 911 and said, give us all calls that the Waunakee Fire District responded to for, I believe, 2 or 3 years. We looked at time of call to the first unit on scene and then determined what unit that was. A lot of times, and there's nothing wrong with this, this is just the system, how it works, is the first unit on scene is usually a chief officer or someone that's in a car or a SUV alone that's there to take command and assess the scene. If I remember correctly, that the first arriving time was really good. It was under 5 minutes, which is really impressive for especially a volunteer department. What we then looked at is, when did you get your first staffed fire suppression unit? So in other words, an engine or something that could initiate a fire attack, pull a hose line, and actually start search and rescue and firefighting. That data for 2023 it was an approximate time of 13 minutes and 27 seconds. That's an average from time of call to the time they got on scene. That was looking at for the first engine, usually. The state DSPS does require 5 people on scene to begin interior firefighting efforts.
And Robert, did they get a call?
No. Yeah.
Oh.
No. That's what he told us.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah.
just explaining why they're leaving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Might be Robert's haircut, I think.
I do
think-
struggle with the look, so. Saw the stress, I wonder now. Is there a way in advance to mitigate issues that come up in transition from volunteer paid on call, part-time departments to full-time? For those, and I understand you're all not in the industry, but that is a huge challenge in departments that go through this transition. It's unfortunate, but it's a huge challenge, and some of it's culture related. Some of it's, I've been here, I've spent my personal time doing this, and now you're getting paid to do this, and your commitment is maybe not to this community because you live somewhere else. there's, the impression that some people get that this is my full-time job. I'm better at it than you are because that's your part-time job. And that culture does exist, unfortunately, and I've seen that in everywhere I go. And I would assume it's in others than just fire departments, but it does exist elsewhere. So it's not a one-size-fit-all method to mitigate. They're common, like I said. Some ways to mitigate the issues are to encourage your part-time group to be your full-time group. So as they transition, they have opportunity, they're given that opportunity. If they elect to take the opportunity, great. If they elect not to take it, you were given that opportunity. Communicate, communicate, communicate. What's going to happen? A lot of times the part-time people feel that they are left out of the loop because they're not there 5 days a week or 24 hours a day, whichever shift they work. So over communicating, I would encourage. Make sure the volunteer, part-time and full-time people are held to the same training and performance standards. So you don't have well, you can't do this, I can, so I'm better than you. And that you can do it. It's feasible to do that. And regular training together. Departments that I see that have challenges will say the full-time people, they don't need to train when the paid on call or the part-time do on Monday nights. They can sit in the other room and watch TV or do something like that. And that becomes, you have a culture issue. Hiring full-time firefighters, outline the process, adding full-time staff in 2029. I will get a caveat that 2029 was a year we used looking at projected growth in the community, looking at age of the fire department members, and looking at call volume. I wouldn't say I wish I was a genius. I would probably be sitting somewhere on a lake right now, drinking something on my dock if I was a genius, not coming to work. But I'm not, but I can do my best projections. And through our projections, we felt 2029 was a good number. Is it going to be the exact number? No, it's going to be around 2029. And that's assuming the economy stays doing what it's doing. It's assuming the growth in the village and Dane County continues. And it's assuming that your DPW does a lot of work for the fire department. And that's assuming that there is going to be growth in the village that will take more time for DPW, where they won't be able to commit as much time to the fire department. So 2025, create a fire commission. 2025, 2026, hire a chief. Those budgetary projections in 2026, we included projections. They should be updated. Consideration given to begin budgeting for positions. My experience in municipal budgeting, and you have probably a better expert on that on your team than me, but it's easier to ease things in like new positions than it is to do it all at once unless you're going to do referendum, and start planning for slowly easing that onto your levy or however you're going to pay for it. The chief and board and commission would need to collectively work together to create a job description and minimum requirements for the positions. We recommended a full-time fire officer, equipment operator, and part-time firefighters. 2027, 2028, the chief and the board ensure the district handbook addresses all those positions. Pay and benefits will be important when you start advertising. Start that hiring process in early 2028. We think it would be important to bring on probably the full-time officer to support the chief maybe 6 months before. So when you hire the rest of the group, you have some leadership there. And then look at, and the bottom number should be 2029, hiring in early 2029. How does McMahon project the response to daytime calls within station staffing and work? This is a good question. The chief at the time probably will have some opinions on it, but in my experience, what happens is the daytime crew handles the low priority, I'll call it the low acuity calls, where 2 or 4 people can go handle that call. Carbon monoxide detector sounding. We sometimes commonly refer to them as smells and bells, fire alarms going off, or unknown odor calls. And then if they need assistance, then they ask for 911 to page the rest of the department. It does not preclude any major higher acuity call should include calling the entire department. And that keeps people engaged and involved too, so they don't feel that they're being left out. Firefighter training requirements. What's the minimum training requirement by a firefighter or for a firefighter? So state DSPS provides the minimum requirements. So you get a general example, what's called entry-level firefighter. So that's the bare minimum to put on an air pack and enter a building that's on fire. So the bare minimum is 60 hours of training. Firefighter 1 certification. So in other words, that's you get an actual certificate that says I'm certified. My opinion, that's a better entry level is like the bare minimum. That was created for very rural communities that really struggled getting paid on call and volunteers. A lot of political pressure was put on the state to create that certification. I am not comfortable with some of the amount of training that's given in that to say that they are ready to do what firefighting involves. Firefighter 1 certification, I think, is the standard that departments should use. But anyway, that's an additional 56 hours. So you see where that time comes in. Firefighter 1 certification, just from a discussion perspective, that's 2 nights a week for a college semester, 4 hours a night. And it has to be at a site where they can do live burn training, things like that. So in your area, Madison College is the place they'd have to go. So there's some travel involved for people. To drive the trucks, there's a litany of certifications you can get from basic 30 hours to 102 hours, fire inspector 60 hours, fire officer 1, so that's the lieutenant and above, captain, deputy chief, fire chief, 40 hours, and fire instructors another 40 hours. So that's like managing a training program for a department. So those were the questions that I had submitted. I'm more than happy to open up any other discussion.
Well, let's open it up for questions. I'll ask Chris, does anyone have a question off the top of their head, or should we go down the row?
I have one about this.
Okay, excellent.
Mine's on this last slide. You may have said this and I missed it while I was taking notes, but what is our minimum training? Do you know in the department? Is it?
I think it's
firefighter
entry
one?
level.
It's entry.
I'm not 100% sure. That's what most places are using. They do Fire 1 certification.
Okay.
So that's good.
And does the fire department pay for that training? Okay, that's what I.
Yeah. There's state reimbursement for the course. I don't know. I think they pay them to go. Yeah.
In regards to the, when you talk about the fire commission and citizens being appointed, just to be clear, you're talking citizens, not as it currently is with elected officials.
Correct. And in a lot, I'd have to review the statutes, but at one time, there was a prohibition for elected officials to serve on a commission in their community. I don't know if that's still in there. I would want to research that before I make a solid statement on that.
Thank you.
Nyla, what questions do you have?
I'd like to hear everyone else's question.
Excellent. Joe?
On slide 8, you had talked about the fire commission, and the question was, what are the downsides to having a fire commission? It occurred to me, one of the downsides would have seemed to be some sort of agility or lack thereof, I guess. Is that accurate?
I don't necessarily, if you have an active fire commission, you should be able to, agility, maybe I'll ask you to clarify, agility, like needing to make a decision.
Yeah.
The decisions the commission should make shouldn't be day-to-day operating decisions.
Okay.
They should be policy level decisions and hiring and significant disciplinary. Most departments allow the chief to make a vast majority of the disciplinary action. Where I see the commissions more get involved is severe appeal type. You're in the employee, I'm the chief, you don't agree with me, I'm going to appeal this, or I'm terminating you, I'm going to appeal that to the commission.
I'd probably add to that, Joe, that there's going to be an element of getting, if implemented, there'd be getting used to new habits and procedure. I mean, we've become pretty good. For example, having a police public safety committee and also having a police commission for certain duties. Now, obviously, we have a police chief and other full-time staff that can manage those intricacies and procedures, but we've become used to it in process.
I guess, I mean, to chime in, I mean, I agree with it's a recommendation, but if I understood the slide, this is a statutory requirement. I'm just gonna, the village has a population of more than 5,500 people, which means that we have to provide fire protection. We can do it one of 4 ways. The village has chosen to do it by creating a joint fire department with other municipalities. Then you get to the language that's in the slide. Each village with a population of 5,500 or more that creates a joint fire department with another municipality shall create a joint board of fire commissioners with that municipality to govern the joint department. The statute says shall. This isn't, I mean, I appreciate the question that was asked, but I don't really believe that there's discretion at this point.
And I would agree. I don't know that it's a question of can we, should we kind of thing. It's more of a, what are the consequences and what should we be prepared for?
Did that, I guess, does our fire department and our current agreement predate when that statute? I don't expect that you know every statute.
I would say this, I don't know if
Someone-
the agreement predates it, but at this point, the statute is shall, so
Yeah.
it's,
I'm just
yeah.
curious how we ended up there, so.
Well, we probably grew to that
Yeah,
size,
okay.
probably.
We just didn't update our agreements
Yeah.
and our procedures.
Can I play out that question just a little bit more?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a Brian or Robert question, but on that legal interpretation, Brian, how does that, is the existing intergovernmental agreement that we have that created the department, does that force the issue of renegotiating elements of the agreement to incorporate the way in which a fire commission would then work as part of the system?
I'm going to answer the question a little more generally. I mean, we can't have a contract that is in conflict with the statute. So how exactly we would get to the point where where the district has a fire commission, that's going to take a process. But, you know, the general rule is if you have language in a contract that violates a statute, that language is illegal. And so therefore it doesn't have weight. And then you get into more statutory issues of, well, is there severability language in the agreement that would suggest that the agreement could still move forward just without that language pulled out? And that's something that I haven't looked at for the fire district agreement. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the statute is pretty clear in light of now the population. I think Sam's probably right. I mean, this agreement was probably drafted when the village was smaller than 5,500, and sometimes those numbers change too in the statute. But at this point, it's pretty clear that that does apply to the village.
Brian, the question came up at the fire committee meeting. Can the fire board be the same membership as the commission? And you answered that question for me. Could you answer it for all of us here?
Sure, I think it's consistent with the information that was in the slide. It would be standard practice when municipalities have a intergovernmental agreement that if you create like a fire district board like we have, that you would have elected officials from each municipality that would be members, and that's standard. But the statutes require the fire commission to be citizen members, and it's right in the statute that it has to be citizen members. So I'm not aware of the prohibition that may exist or may not have existed at one point in time. But as I read the statute, the fire commission members cannot be the same as the fire board members because the fire commission members have to be citizen members.
Thank you.
While we're still on the fire commission concept, is there a statute for the towns, or would they fall under that? But they don't have that requirement, just to make sure I'm understanding. They don't have that requirement, but we do.
I don't know what applies to towns. I'm not sure if Robert does.
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's okay. I don't expect anyone to know all the statutes, but
And
I'm just curious, like.
just to catch everyone up, we're talking about the fact that we're in violation of the state statute that requires us, as we now understand, to have a fire commission. We're required. It's not an option. It says shall.
That's my opinion. It says shall in both instances. So
Okay.
that's,
So we're trying to understand what that means for us. All right. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just, I guess, curious how that impacts if the towns are in a very similar situation, or if it's just us being the only village in the.
and I should be clear here. I'm speaking on behalf of the village of Waunakee.
Correct.
The fire district, my understand, has its own council, which would be standard practice. And so Obviously, an attorney for a different body may have a different opinion than me. So I'm just giving you my opinion for the Village of Waunakee.
So would it then look something like we have for the police, where we have a police committee and a police commission? There would be a fire committee, a fire commission, or could be a fire committee and fire commission? Or is the fire, and I realize
So
I'm asking a lot. of
when you
deep
say that,
questions.
so there's a public, is it called, really called the Police Committee in Waunakee, or is it called the Public Safety Committee? Okay, yeah, committee. So that's a committee that in all likelihood, I think was created by the village board.
Mhm.
And I do recall that we had, I've only been to that meeting one time because we had a hearing related to our transient merchant permits. But that would be a committee that would be created by the board, and you can still have that if you want. But the fire commission is something that's statutory in nature.
All right, that was one of my questions. Actually, I'm gonna turn it over to Nyla and Robert unless we have other questions, because I know you guys are far more well versed in this. So,
Go ahead, Robert.
yeah.
Okay. So thank you for coming back, Robert, for this. I have a few questions, the clarification. So for updating the fire district agreement and bringing in the mediator, I just want to be clear, when we do the mediation, that would be like in the intergovernmental mediation. This would not be with the membership as a part of that process, since they're not subject to the IGA.
I think that would be back to the opinion of the attorney of the
Okay.
district. And I think the village may need to make some decisions how they want to deal with that.
Because the current agreement has it that we contract for service, that they're not.
How I read the current agreement is that the 4 municipalities and the volunteer fire department are parties to that agreement. It's McMahon's opinion that it's an intergovernmental agreement. It's not, so there's a non-governmental entity to that agreement. So I would probably defer to the attorney for the fire district to deem that, whether or not you could update that agreement, or back to whether or not that legally can be an intergovernmental agreement. I don't have that opinion.
Okay. Would there, let's see. With the withdrawal from the district, which I agree is not something that should only be used as a last resort. Can we get creative with that? Because I've heard that there's some municipalities that when they do a withdrawal from the agreement, larger ones, then they turn around and just say, we won't make the other municipality pay us out. We'll just give them an equivalent of contract for service, so that they don't actually need to raise any funds themselves to pay out, pay us out if we did leave. Is that?
I would, in my world, everything's negotiable.
Okay,
Let's
no,
put it that
that's
way.
why I want to make, so there's no, I guess a better way to put it, there's no one way to do it. We can.
Correct.
We can.
That's
negotiate that.
my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so when it comes to creation of the fire commission, which I, wholeheartedly support. So we're going to run into the same problem that we currently have with the current board, which is how do we decide who gets how many votes for said commission? Is there, I'm going to ask this question, and you can just say, I don't know, but is there any recommendation for how we go about allocating out the number of votes on that? Because the statute doesn't it just says that we have to do it. It doesn't contemplate how many or who, I'm sorry, it doesn't say how many votes you give to each municipality. It just says that we have to work with the other municipalities in the agreement.
I would agree. I'm going off the top of my head, but I believe the statute says for joint departments, the members, so in other words, the communities that make it up decide how many members are on the commission. For specific for cities, I believe it limits it to 5, but I think for joint departments, it makes it up to, I don't think there's a maximum. I have the same opinion that I believe we wrote in the report that if I owned, I'll give an analogy. If I owned 70% of a company, I would want a majority share of vote or decision in what's going on. When you have municipalities that are of similar size, I've seen successful agreements where everyone has one vote. And where they're all sort of similar, they're all paying within 10% of each other. It's not this vast majority, but in your situation, that's vastly different.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that then? So when we're talking about if we're forming a fire commission so that we're upholding the state statute and we're in good standing and we don't get letters from attorneys at the state level that would scare us. Because it's a commission and it's a citizen representative, it wouldn't necessarily be us on that committee. It would be representatives of the community that would be voting and serving in that capacity. Although, are we prevented from, and this is, I think, one of our questions.
I think I would need to look at this further, but I do believe that elected officials would be prohibited from sitting on that.
Okay, so Waunakee residents that would apply for and be appointed would be the ones that would be making the decisions on our behalf. Okay, representing us on our behalf.
I would agree. Like Mr. Kleinmeyer said, I've seen different attorneys with different opinions, but that's how I view it. That's my personal view of the statute too.
Thanks. All right, back to you, Robert.
Yep. When it comes to, I should have submitted this as a question. I thought for sure somebody would ask it. When it comes to driving an ambulance, what's the minimum requirement? Do you know off the top of your head for them?
I believe it's a driver's license.
Just a
Not
driver's-
in the state. State recently changed the statute, I believe, to you can drive with training of driving that ambulance.
Okay.
Depending on what service plan you're under, there's different levels of service, but
Okay.
Isn't that EVOC training?
I don't even,
Emergency-
I'd have to refresh my memory on that.
See vehicle operational, I don't know what the.
You may
last
have to
letter
have
is.
EVOC training, but
Yeah.
there was about 2 years ago, the state used to be, you had to be first responder and an EMT on an ambulance was the bare minimum. And then they implemented some services could go to just a civilian driver of the ambulance.
Okay. Thank you. Incident rescue management. When it comes to automatic aid, I heard some comments when we discussed this at the fire board level about automatic aid can kind of burn, no, that's not the right word. I'm sorry, we're talking about fire. That's totally inappropriate. It can become too repetitive to the point that, you become the district nobody wants to respond to because they're tired of responding to your automatic aid because the calls aren't severe enough.
Mhm.
What is the, level at which that automatic aid kicks in? Does it really, what happens? Do we control that at what level that kicks in? Or is there like a county or state thing that we have to follow to be uniform?
It would be discretion of the district because they're the ones that would have the agreement.
Okay.
I would recommend, because I agree with your statement that some relationships the welcome gets overworn or over, I guess that's the right word. So you need to make it critical. My example would be there's certain keywords in the dispatcher's world that they go over to dispatching for a structure fire versus a fire alarm, or I smell something weird. That my building is on fire, I see black smoke, I see fire in the building. That's where you start calling automatic aid. I would, for a normal day-to-day call for service, I don't believe it's an appropriate use of mutual aid.
Okay. Thank you for your opinions, by the way, on the, what it would look like for transitioning. I firmly believe tone from the top is what would control that. So I was happy to see the communicate, something Nyla and I have spoken repeatedly about throughout this process of making sure that everything is open and communicated. So we were doing something right on that front. Yep, that's the last of my right now.
And I did have a question about the staging of hiring full-time firefighters, just so I understand and I'm clear on it. In 2025, 2026, the recommendation is after we create a commission is then to hire a full-time fire chief. And is that recommendation because we would expect that fire chief to be able to shepherd us towards hiring a part-time day crew and take the leadership on that?
I think so. I mean, you have that opportunity to build that. What's the process I want to be here as the chief to manage for the next X number of years? Is that 2025, 2026 dates set in stone? Again, it's budgetary, it's with due respect to your current staff that are here. It's how does that work into the plan that only people that are, hence the need for the commission involved with the department that understand the day-to-day issues there and the board that would govern the department.
And the commission would be tasked with making that or working with the existing fire force to make those decisions.
The commission, the commission has the ultimate authority to appoint the chief.
Okay.
How you get to that point is not addressed in the statutes.
Okay.
So how you select the person to be the chief is not addressed in the statutes. The commission basically says, you're the chief. I've seen it done anywhere from the commission does everything on their own to there's different levels and people in the organization that are involved in interviews, assessments. So there is input from the department as to who is selected. That's given to the commission. Ultimately, though, the commission has that final say.
Great. Do we have any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, Aaron.
Beyond transitioning to full-time staffing, do you think there are ways, either in the more short term or long term, that the village can support the fire department in recruiting, retention, any of the logistics behind, maintaining a strong force?
Yeah. Ensuring people they have everyone has a value and ensuring they're well funded. Ensuring that the facility is somewhere people want to be. The station, where you'll find people that will hang out in the station, which helps communities. And being supportive of initiatives that recruit people, whether that's using the DPW. I'll tell you, you can't put a value on what your DPW staff does for the fire department, during the day. Because recruiting people during the day is a huge challenge, even with the culture that sort of work from home culture, that's still a challenge to get people that are around during the day to respond to calls. And I think that would be a good first step toward supporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I want to thank all of you firefighters for the time that you put in to the district. Driving through areas in Wisconsin, I see signs out, come volunteer for the fire department. And we have a good number of people in the fire department. But one thing that I am concerned about in the future is, will we be able to continue with the volunteers? Because it isn't just a fire department issue having volunteers. There's many groups, children's groups, youth activities, different, like Optimist, Rotary, they're all striving to grow their numbers because their numbers have dwindled. And so when I first got on the fire committee, I heard concerns about numbers and about volunteers. And that's why I pursued this, is because in the future, I don't want to be looking at the communities in our district and we don't have firefighters. I don't want to be caught with our pants down, so to say. I know that the department that we have is doing a great job with firefighting. But I want to keep our fire department healthy and safe. As far as I can see and what I've seen in the short time that I've been on the committee, the committee has always tried to fund the fire department with what we've been told that they need. So I feel that we've done a good job there. When we decided to do the study, I said I wanted it to be transparent and open. I feel the process has been transparent and open. And I thank any member who took the time to be interviewed and ask questions, and I appreciate that because that helped gather information to have the study done. So I just wanted to say thanks for everyone's cooperation. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you to move us into the future, and however that pans out. We have to work with the municipalities, we have to work with you. And I'm just hoping that we can find a way to move into the future. And I will tell you, it's difficult being part of something, part of change. Change is very difficult. But if you're part of something that's going on and you're looking at this much of it, which is the smaller picture, you are so focused on that little part that you may not see the big picture. I've been there. So we all need to look at the big picture to get us into the future. So thanks.
Thank you, Nyla. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody in the village when we say thank you guys for the work that you do and for being here and being committed every day to keeping the village safe. Our job as a village board is to support you in the work that you do and make sure that you have everything you need to be safe, to be successful, to take care of yourselves, to take care of your fellow firefighter brother and sisters. So other comments everybody has? No? Thank you very much, Robert. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say to Robert, I think he and his team have
Yeah.
done a very fair and commendable job for us, and adding another meeting to come back and address a litany of questions. By the way, for the fire folks who are here, I know you missed part of the meeting, but we'll have the video available so you can see it all. I'll get the slides over from Robert's PowerPoint to Gary and Brian, and they can certainly distribute those to the crew so they can see the discussions tonight. And as far as next steps, I'm thinking Chris and Ed, likely we would have, or to the board, I think we would likely have this on for further discussion and action on your part to think about what we do or don't do next, probably especially as it relates to the intergovernmental elements and recommendations that we heard from Robert. So I'm thinking that would likely be on your next agenda for more discussion, unless you want to, this item is listed for discussion and action tonight too, so we can go into some of that today as well, if you'd like.
So I would like to have some discussion because we are going into budget season. And since that's going to be decided at next Monday's meeting, I think we should probably have that discussion now as a board, because this is going to be our first opportunity to, have a discussion with the towns about what it is that we would like to move towards, because there is obviously a budget element to this. If we ask them to start budgeting for a full-time chief, we would need to make sure that that's brought forth for that budgetary discussion. So if you'd be okay with.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Do we think we're going to need Robert Whitaker to be with us for the discussion?
No.
Okay. Do we? Okay. I know you have a 7:30 meeting.
I do. I'll
Yeah.
stick around though. This was my
Okay.
first pick. That 7:30 came up later. They know I'm a maybe for them,
Okay.
so.
All right. All right. So that's our next discussion. Then thank you very much, Robert, for everything you've done. It's been good working with you. Yeah. All right. So budget wise, is that something that we want to ask the fire committee to do? I mean, or operation number one or order number one is obviously to ask for the creation of a fire commission so that we are in good standing with state statutes. We've understood a little bit tonight about what that could look like, but I think we probably need more information about how it's formed. So that we'll probably have to bring up at next week's meeting. And then the second thing would be budgeting for hiring. With that, do we know, and Robert Whitaker, now that you sat down, what is the salary range that we would be expected? Is that might actually be in your report, and I'm just not recalling the number. Oh, could you go up to the podium? Sorry.
I'm gonna have to look, but without benefits, I think we included like 100 to 120,000.
All right,
So
thank you.
add another
30% for
30% of
benefit?
that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Yeah. All right.
Just looking at page 23 of the report, you had estimated cost for adding full-time chief is $150K per year, including wages and benefits.
Okay. There we go. All right. Are there any other items that we should forward to next week's meeting?
If they haven't budgeted it, we probably should also ask for a record keeping
Record keeping software?
software to be added.
And then third item, I know the remediation system, 90% could possibly be covered by grants, but we should probably budget that. And Gary and I had talked about that 2 weeks ago, maybe now, about finding out what that might cost.
One note on the full-time chief funding request. Keep in mind the time required to prepare ourselves to get to the point of recruiting. You're probably not, based on Robert's suggestions, you're probably not until the fourth quarter of the year, I'm guessing, before you actually see someone in the role.
Right, so we would discount that down to a quarter of the annual cost for the next year's budget.
Keeping in mind, recruitment support if needed by the department, that was gonna be 8 to 20K.
To 20.
And also just remembering that there is some fund, it was 189,000, I think, is in the fund balance that could help transition that in as well.
180,000, was it 89?
I think it's 189,000 that's accumulated over those years. You wouldn't want to use that all at once necessarily.
All right, other items that would
And
require us.
I have just a question, and Robert, I think you and Nyla maybe have looked at this more carefully. I'm not an expert on how the budget process maneuvers through the fire board process, but can you remind maybe me and the rest of the board how that process works with the fire board?
Yes, so the board will have its meeting next month, I'm sorry, next Monday, to vote between the municipalities for approval of the budget. If there is not universal consent on the budget, then it actually does not pass. It requires a full unanimous vote. And then it would go into not a real mediation, because there's not a mediator used, but each municipality would then need to meet to resolve the disagreement. They would have until, by our agreement, they have until November 1st to negotiate through the budget and come to a full agreement. If anybody does not approve of it by November 1st, then that begins the process of actually, which is what we don't want, which is it would begin the process of winding down the district, because then everybody would basically lose their last year's investment and they'd have to start paying out the way that it's written under our dispute resolution. So it would not be in anybody's, it's kind of a poison pill, I think, to make sure that people come to an agreement before November 1st. Hope that some of these are reasonable, because especially since there's existing funds to use. So I know that some of the smaller municipalities have expressed concern they don't want to spend more money than they're already spending. So if we are showing with the budget that some of these items can be covered by existing funds to help ease into it, I think that that would kind of remove that argument that they're suddenly going to have to come up with a bunch of money. Another item that we didn't talk about tonight, because nobody asked the question, I don't blame them, because it gets really in the weeds. But when it comes to their levy limits, since some of the municipalities are starting to make comments about their levy limits, I heard this at EMS as well, that there are certain steps that they can take to increase their funding without impacting their levy limits. Robert, can you speak to that one really fast? Because I know I'm going to butcher that.
There is a statute for both EMS and fire joint districts to exempt the increase from the levy limit. And there's a line on the levy limit worksheet that the clerks get annually, I believe, that pulls out the increase from the levy limit. It's, I can't remember, line J, I think it is. So you back out your number from your levy limit.
And that's based off of CPI plus like 2% or
See,
something?
up to CPI plus 2%.
Okay.
So the total charges can be increased no more than CPI plus 2%. I believe that does require a resolution from all participating municipalities to actually utilize that statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a alternative that we can provide if they're concerned about reaching levy limit.
Yeah. All right, we've got some tools. Sam.
Should we say anything about, we talk about a fire commission, should we make any sort of apportionment recommendation as well? Since we're discussing that as something that we want, we would like X number of seats, we would like it X size, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was trying to, for this specific meeting, we just limit it to budgetary
Okay,
items.
okay.
I know exactly where you're going with that. If we get through the budget first, then we can have
Okay.
the second conversation. Feedback that I've received from the towns that I do listen to when they're talking to us is that they don't want to move too fast and too.
Understood.
So they view, if we stick to the budget on this one, then we say, then we'll have a future conversation about the apportionment. It's definitely conversations to be had, because if we have to make this commission to get in compliance with the law, I mean, we're gonna have to have that conversation.
Hey,
All right. Anything else we want to bring up next week? We're showing our cards here, are we not? So.
This isn't necessarily about next week's meeting, but when we're talking about the makeup of members on potential commission, have you seen, or are we familiar with, I'm trying to think like how we have the House and Senate, like representing, both proportionally. And I know in the report, it showed how the value, population and calls, but I'm just throwing out there, do we have any idea if that's worked elsewhere, or we think it would be beneficial to, especially if we still have a committee and a commission, if one is, more of an equal vote for everyone and more is, maybe financially then more proportionate by finances, just a concept, but have you seen that anywhere?
I've seen all the above. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about the pros and cons, but I think it would be, there's nothing that I know that would prevent you from mixing it up, so to speak.
I think both in like my desire to always problem solve, but when there is like such a small, it's like less than 1% or it is 1%, that just kind of alerts me. I don't want to throw this, if these big changes or, any of these huge finances, where, okay, now we have so much of the financial part of the equation that, there's no representation beyond 1 or 2 votes, I guess. So
I mean, I'll build up, we've had some
Yeah.
and continue to have some really good, volunteers who have served on this commission or
yeah.
committee for a long time and have been valuable in guiding policy and keeping the community safe. Would hate to lose that because we're being completely proportional and at least one of our communities is only 1% of the budget.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we would absolutely want to keep in mind, is that everybody that's in this district is important to us. And we want to make sure everybody's got a say in it. But again, a little bit more proportionality might be a little bit better. Yes.
I'm gonna say something, and Robert, you can disagree if you want, but I mean, it's intentional under the statutes that police and fire commissions are citizen members, not elected officials. I mean, the state wants to keep essentially that body separate from the municipal bodies. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, the citizen members are only limited to the extent that the municipalities control the purse strings. Otherwise, they don't have any obligation to listen to the municipalities, and that's intentional under the statutes, in my
I
opinion.
agree 100%.
Okay.
Police and fire commissions have probably some of them most authority of any body in the state, in my opinion.
I mean, and I would only see the board's role as just setting the guidelines that we would like them to operate in. And then to your point, Aaron, they wouldn't be, the smaller ones wouldn't be blocked out at all because they would be shaping the policy. They'd still be putting together the vote. We don't want to just I don't think it would be good policy if we just went in and said, this is what Waunakee wants to do, and then we voted that way. But as long as we just set the guide rails and they had that say in it, I would hope that they would find that good.
I guess I'm thinking too, just like future growth, where is future growth? Are we going to grow so big that our 70% becomes bigger? And then there's a huge financial disparity of, who's involved, and especially if, I don't know, towns are shrinking. If less people are there, then suddenly it's truly on a smaller amount of people that, it becomes unsustainable for them to even be part of our fire. And I don't want to leave someone then unprotected, I guess, but.
It'll take some thinking. It'll take some thought. Other questions or comments? Anything else we should discuss in preparation for next week? No?
I think I'll just monitor with our reps on the board then how that meeting goes, and from there determine whether, 2 weeks from now is the right time for another agenda item for you to discuss. So we'll stay in touch on that.
Just another, sorry,
Go ahead.
another thank you to you all for being here. I think Maria is like the luckiest gal in town. Probably right now. But yeah, that's what I meant. But no, it just like, oh, I'm losing earrings. But yeah, I know you guys give a lot of time, and to give extra time to be here tonight, it means a lot to all of us. So thank you for what you do for this town, village.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ditto, retweet, as you said last week. Yeah, retweet. All right, thank you. And many of you will see next week. So thank you very much. Thank you, Robert, for all of your work on this, and everyone on the board for all of the thought and time that has gone into this. So, all right, with that, on to our next agenda item, which is discuss and take possible action on a proposal by Municipal Code Enforcement LLC to provide code enforcement services for the village of Waunakee. And I believe this is Lauren.
Yeah, so staff have been looking into a more robust code enforcement program. Currently, what our system is a hybrid complaint-based system, or when staff is out and about doing something else and they notice a compliance issue, we address it at that time. We would like to take a more proactive approach to code enforcement. The current issue being that we're constrained by our resources. There's 2 people in the community development department, and we share the work of more than 2 people. So while we were contemplating adding a full-time staff person who would primarily be responsible for code enforcement, we were contacted by a company called Municipal Code Enforcement LLC, or MCE, which is a private company that provides code enforcement services to municipalities on a contract basis. They're currently the code enforcement providers for the village of Windsor. We also got some feedback from the city of Whitewater that was really positive. They've had a contract for a little over a year and a half now. A group of staff interviewed the owner, Allison Schwark, and we were really impressed with the company and what it could potentially offer to us, and had them provide a draft contract, which is in the packet tonight, with up to 20 hours of code enforcement services per week with no minimums and no retainer. So if we used 0 hours 1 week, it would be 0. If we used up to 20, it would be whatever the math is. That's 20 times 49. So if the village board did choose to go the route of contracting with MCE, the maximum anticipated annual budget, if we went 20 hours every week, would be about $51,000, which is in contrast to other similar full-time positions in Dane County, where that's kind of the starting salary, not including benefits for those kinds of positions. We did a small salary survey, and for the full-time position that we were looking at, salaries were somewhere in the like $50,000 to $65,000 range. And we do have Allison and April here tonight from MCE to answer any questions that you might have of them. But we wanted to bring it forward to the board as an option, as opposed to a new full-time staff person to handle code enforcement in the village.
And if I could add a few staff
Yes.
comments, and I'd love for Allison and April to give you a little bit of a picture of how they do what they do. But I'll tell you that if there was a company like this out there 10 years ago, I would have been calling them. anecdotally, not just city managers, but professionals in municipal functions in almost every city and village in this state find code enforcement to be the least enjoyable element of our job. I guess what I'll say is that no matter how good a job we can do and nice a job we can do at being code enforcement folks, it is a wedge driving force between your staff and your citizens. It is so tough to walk that line. And if, like I said, if I knew that, and this is this is a newer venture, I think there's going to be some steam behind this, because this dynamic of code enforcement and the way the interplay between staff and those we're working with in the community is so sensitive and becomes emotional as well. So I'll say that, don't take this the wrong way, I'm usually pretty leery of cold call sales. I rarely take the call. The letter usually goes pretty quick into the wastebasket. This one I held onto for a couple months, and as we started to, as staff, talk about the right request for budget for staffing for this building, I presented this letter out to staff and I said, maybe we should call these folks. And we collectively were intrigued. So I'd love for them, if you're willing, to have them tell you a little bit about how they do what they do.
Yeah, please. Yep. Head up to the podium, and if you don't mind pressing the button until the light turns green.
Perfect. Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Allison. This is my associate, April. We both work for Municipal Code Enforcement, LLC, and I am the owner of the company as well. As staff mentioned, we did approach the village, I think several months ago, as we were doing some marketing in this area and some outreach to other communities. We more recently started a code enforcement program in the village of Windsor, as well as the town of Vienna. And since then, we've been looking to grow into this area. We primarily started in Walworth County, which is in southern Wisconsin. So our home base is Delavan, Wisconsin currently. We've been operating for about 9 years now, 8 to 9 years. And that's how long I've been doing code enforcement and zoning administration. We've since expanded all over the state of Wisconsin. So we start as low as Walworth County, Racine, Rock, Dane, Kenosha, and we expand all the way up into Juneau and Barron County, about 5 hours from here. So we've really grown and expanded, and that's exciting for us. We started with code enforcement. We've expanded now into some zoning and planning, as well as building inspection. We custom tailor all of our contracts to fit the need of the community. So it's not a one size fits all. We don't have to offer all of those services to you if code enforcement is your only need or desire. So from there, we started discussions, and I hope it was positive that we're here tonight. So that's a good thing. But essentially what we do is we come in and we provide a non-biased, neutral party approach to code enforcement. And we custom tailor the program to fit the need of the community. So in some communities, we are more reactive, where we wait for those complaints to come in because that fits the need of the community or their budget a little bit better. In other communities, we have a very proactive base where we are out monitoring the community for any and all ordinance violations, and we're enforcing those on a daily and weekly basis. We're currently in 26 other communities, and each community is a little bit different. So it sounds like the need for the village of Waunakee would be a good mix between proactive and complaint-based, but finding that fine line, that happy medium, so that we're not disturbing your community. We're not, enforcing things that the village does not want us to enforce or aren't valid here in the village. So we come in and we try and acclimate ourselves and figure out exactly what your needs are.
Excellent. All right. What questions do we have? Nyla, do you have any questions?
Okay, first of all, I'm glad there's people out there willing to do what you do, because I've been frustrated with not being able to get something enforced. I've had letters sent to me from neighbors since I've been on the board saying, when's this going to get done? I've made the complaint, nothing's getting done, et cetera, et cetera. I guess my question is, if your home base isn't here in Dane County, exactly how do you handle getting here and doing what needs to be done?
Absolutely. So that's where April comes into play. April would be your lead inspector. So April lives in close proximity to your village. She's also the main inspector and point of contact for the village of Windsor. So she would be working closely with other communities surrounding you. She would be working here, and she would be the one who would be conducting the inspections. She would be visiting your municipality on a daily or weekly basis, touching base with residents, and she would be that main point of contact who's always here. Of course, I'm about an hour away, and if I ever need to be here in the event of an emergency, I make it happen. I'm here within that hour as fast as I can get here. So if we have an emergency situation, an animal overpopulation situation, a hoarding situation, anything that requires immediate assistance, whether it's a night, weekend, holiday, you name it, we are here as fast as we possibly can be. Yep.
All right, Sam.
So in terms of the complaint system from residents, is it where we forward them to staff and then they send them to you, or are you gonna want, people to contact you all directly and say, hey, I have a problem, whatever, so forth?
It's really the desire of the municipality. In some municipalities, staff likes to be really hands-off. They like that we're taking the burden off of their departments and processing our own complaints. So they will put our contact information right on the village or town website. And that way they can direct residents to reach out to us directly to file a complaint or talk with us about something that's going on in the community. Of course, staff members may still receive complaints here and there. Sometimes they're forwarded to us via email, or we'll get a phone call and we'll take care of it right away. In other communities, they would like to be that first point of contact. So in the event that there's some background information they want to give us, or if they want to confirm that it's a valid complaint before passing it on to us, we're fine with that too.
I think, Sam, maybe to figure that out, it's gonna be a good experiment for us. I think there might be a element of throttle related to the expense. You could imagine, rogue complaint efforts, literally, you can probably find a violation on almost every property any given day, and that could be taken to a pretty intense level. So the throttle for the work completed versus the budget or the expense we want to undertake is something we'll want to figure out how the protocols will work. At this point, I don't think we've talked about or settled on it's going to work perfectly for us, but we'll be open to having that conversation.
Ultimately, the staff and the board answers to the residents. So they will probably give us some cue as to how they feel things are going. Whether they think there's too much red tape, whatever they're thinking, they're pretty good at letting us know. So
we definitely hear that the past couple of weeks have been
And we
more
appreciate
proof
that.
than we've had ever before, practically.
And we appreciate that. We are open always to listen and hear and improve. Excellent. Sam, other questions? No. Erin?
I think my question goes off of that of just what do we want to focus on? I don't want us to suddenly fire up all the residents, like now they're getting violations for everything they've been doing their whole lives. Not that they should be doing those things, but especially if some of our codes, maybe we should look at, if that's what we want to be enforcing. So I guess I just hope if we approve this contract, that I think this is a great idea. We kind of have a plan for what we're focusing on rather than just have at it, I guess.
Absolutely. And when we start in a new community, we like to keep the line of communication completely open. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of trial and error, especially in a community that your code enforcement has been very lax for several years. I think when anyone comes in and starts to enforce ordinances that historically have not been enforced, even though they should have been, we will receive some pushback. And so, like I said earlier, we kind of walk that fine line. We find a good happy medium. We keep a really open line of communication with staff members and administration to figure out what are our priorities, what you want us to be doing versus not doing. I'm a strong believer in if your ordinance states something, we should enforce it. And if you don't want us to enforce it, or if you don't like that ordinance, we should get rid of it. Otherwise, why is it there? So we will enforce everything that's in your ordinances or have a discussion with you about how we could modify your ordinances to better fit the need of the community.
Joe.
Oh, can I just?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
No, and that's what I appreciating that. I think I saw in here that like, the village gets a report. Is it Lauren? Maybe gets like of what is coming up or finding. So I think just like
Yeah.
if
So one of the things that we requested was a regular report. In the contract, I had them put in once a week.
Yeah.
So that way we can incorporate what we get from them into our departmental reports that go out to village board members so that you would be apprised of how the program is going as well.
yeah, and I think you do a really good job of this and our staff do. If there are things that, yeah, we don't want to be enforcing, they shouldn't be there. And so I think just if us as a body can, work on those things or whoever makes up this body or your positions, I guess.
Right, Joe.
Couple of questions. First one's probably for Lauren or Todd. What does the transition to this look like if we were to go this route come January? And then sort of the other side of that, we get through 2025 and we go, yeah, that really isn't for us. What does the transition back out potentially look like?
And I can speak to that just a little bit as well.
Sure.
So in some communities, we've started on an interim basis, and I'm really happy to say that they've stuck with us, and we've continued on for years to come. In the event that we provide a more interim service so that the village can have some more detailed thoughts on how they want to move forward for the long-term future, we're happy to do that. Or in the event that you decide this is not for you whatsoever, and you want to transition out of it or into an employee position or something of that nature, we would absolutely be willing to just work with that continuing party. Of course, we would turn over all of our documents to the Village of Waunakee. We do keep a Google Drive, so that would have all of our violation notices, our spreadsheets, our inspection photos, all of that would be handed over to the village upon our departure. And then we would also assist with the transition to anyone who would be taking over for us.
I did ask a question of them when we were having our earlier interview. How many municipality clients have you lost since you've started operating in 9 years ago?
That was none, zero.
Very good. Okay. One of the comments you made was about the records being stored, and that led me down the open records thought. If something has to happen there, what does that end up looking like from our side or your side?
there's actually a statement in the proposed contract, I believe, and if there isn't, we can certainly add it in. But usually there is something within our contract that states, we have a specified time frame of 10 days to turn over anything for an open records request, something of that nature. I think state statute says we have 30 days, but we'll do it as fast as possible. Typically in a community that receives an open records request, they will just send us an email or a copy of that records request, ask us for everything, and we will turn everything we have over to them.
Okay. And is that valid from your
That's
perspective?
exactly what we would do with any staff member or any other record requests.
Perfect.
Except
Okay.
that I think statutes state a reasonable time as opposed to a specific time.
Okay, yeah.
Nyla. I was just reading about open records requests, and is there a charge to receive those records? Because that's been something that's been done with other programs, and I just want to know if there's an additional charge for that.
Not on our end. We'll turn everything over and we usually let the clerk know that there were no additional charges.
Thank you.
If we can go back to that transition concept, particularly January of 2025, or do we flip a switch or?
Yeah, so if the board is favorable to proceeding down this route, our action suggested tonight is to advise staff to budget for this. Because I think certainly we want to look at this in the full picture of our budgeting capacity for 25 as well. Your budget's complete, what day, November? Yeah, mid-November, we complete our budget process. If this remains in, we will execute the contract with this firm that following day and begin conversations about establishing our protocol, establishing the arrangements, the communication channels, and so on. So that would be hopefully a month and a half, if not a couple month ramp up to very early 25 implementation.
Okay, and does that then have an impact on the 2024 budget? Is there, are we billed at the
Well, I guess
same
the
rate?
question
or-
is there an expense for onboarding?
No.
Okay, so I think the answer is no, Joe.
Okay. Then a couple other questions. I see there's a part in here, I think it was maybe section 4, I don't remember. Anyway, dealt with, no, it was in section 2, dealing with the police, and it sounds like if there's something that is initiated on your side, but it needs to involve the police department, you work that way. I don't know if there would be a scenario where something would start with the police department and have to go the other way.
That could very well happen. There are certain circumstances where somebody may call the non-emergency line or maybe make contact with the police department prior to making contact with us. Typically, when we start in a new municipality, we'll just introduce ourselves to the police department, try and develop a good relationship with them so that they know in the event that that occurs, they can contact April or I and have us take the situation over from that point forward. And they can just let the residents be aware of that as well, that they'll pass that information along to the code enforcement department.
Has the chief been aware of any of this at this point?
He participated in the interviews
Excellent.
with us, had some good questions. Obviously, as any good police chief would be, he was taking his time in the discussion. Any latest word from chief? I think he was interested in proceeding, but had questions about how exactly will things work.
Sure.
Again, as any good chief would.
Yep. And then the only other thing I had, seeing a whole pile of stuff on here, and the one thing that I've heard regularly seems to be kind of a pain point is signs. But I'm not specifically seeing that listed in here. So is that something we're bringing in or keeping it?
Yeah, so grabbing a yard sign here or there, I don't think necessarily staff will stop doing that if called upon or if observed. But I'll tell you that the installation of illegal signs on a storefront unexpectedly is something that takes a surprising amount of time to first go out and measure, issue the letters, follow up on, double check, and so on. So I'm thinking most everything above, small yard signing in the wrong place issue is probably gonna be, sent over to them.
Okay.
Do you guys have experience with signage?
Yes, we do. And so in some communities, we do provide zoning services. So we have a pretty good understanding of sign ordinances and how they read and how they're enforced. So that's something we'd be happy to step in and help out with. We would just work together with staff and go forward how they wanted us to.
Okay. If that's a direction that we're looking to go in, personally, I'd kind of like to see it called out a little bit more in here, but it's up to you guys.
Language within the agreement scope?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, there's property maintenance and unsightly debris and, all those sorts of things, and just something about the sign piece as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could certainly add that in. We could also add just a blanket statement, just stating other tasks as allocated by the community development director too.
Other ordinance.
There will always be odds and ends.
Of course. That's everything I've got. Thank you.
Robert.
Fun of going last is that everybody else has asked your questions. I would get some clarification. So, so we can set this up as like private labels so that if somebody calls, they think they're talking to the village as opposed to an outside service, or do you always disclose that you're an outside service?
We will disclose that we're an outside contracted service
Okay.
for the village of Waunakee. So we're working on behalf of the village through contract.
Okay. And then, I was taking time, and I did earlier as well, to part of open records is that every municipality you're working with, it's pretty easy to see your presentation. So I see you're pretty consistent in the cost and terms. So I'm assuming that it's just standard. You guys only do 1 year. You wouldn't consider a different price for a multi-year agreement, or?
We'd be open to discussion on anything. We're very flexible with our contracts. So there are certain communities where we've done longer terms. Most municipalities prefer the annual contract because then it's just a discussion brought up with their budget and as they're continuing into the next year, but we're open to discussion.
Can I ask approximately, you seem to be growing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
At what point are you having like any issues? I feel like everybody and their brother is having issues with staffing. So is that a concern that you guys have with the number of new municipalities that you're onboarding? Or I wouldn't expect you to come into us and be like, no, we're having issues doing it. But I mean, like realistically, like you guys have like a strategic plan that says like, for every X number of municipalities, we're going to hire another inspector.
Yes, yep. So we have not experienced any difficulty with hiring at this point. I think my approach has always been to proactively hire. So I'm hired before I need staff in order to continue with the demand and provide a great service to each municipality, because I will not take on more than I know I'm capable of, and I do not want to provide a subpar service. I know there's several contracted agencies out there where you may see that. You may see a lack in response time or a lack in their overall services and performance. And so that's exactly what I don't want. So we have been proactively hiring and training. We're constantly training. I feel like I've been lucky to have a really great team. So along with April, we also have now 28 other staff members between full and part-time. So we currently have the capacity to continue to grow.
Okay.
Robert, I had asked the exact same type of questions very pointedly. I also asked if their letter to the village seeking our business was part of a blanket campaign, that went, letter to every single community like ours around. Your answer to that was that you were specifically seeking out Waunakee along with very few other communities. And I think you told me
Yes.
there's no other community that you're currently, well, I'll let you, are there other communities that you're currently negotiating with besides DeForest?
Just DeForest at this time, yes. So similar to the excuse me, similar to the same time we reached out to Waunakee, we reached out to the town of Vienna and DeForest because we had signed the contract with the Village of Windsor. Since then, we've had meetings and discussions with the Village of Windsor. I think it's something that they're considering for their 2025 budget year. Yeah, DeForest, excuse me. Thank you.
I'm glad that you brought up Windsor because I saw their contract. Have you spoken with them to get their thoughts on it?
I haven't called Windsor yet.
I have not. I tried to go with people who had been with MCE longer,
Okay.
just to see kind of what the long-term view of it was, as opposed to, well, we've been with them for 2 months and it's been our learning curve. So I can definitely reach out to them, but we haven't done so yet.
No, you said that you called some other references, so that's what's gonna be my next question is, did we? The only other, now I've absolutely forgotten the question I was gonna ask. It's probably for the best. Oh, I remember now. I know that you had mentioned that, like if there's an issue on a night or weekend or something, that's we'd take care of it. I don't know if I'm just missing it in the draft. That kind of sounds like a little bit like a service level agreement, and I wasn't sure, is there other materials that talk about a service level agreement that we have or not? That would be the only feedback that I would really have, is that since this is a time sensitive service that citizens would be relying on, and kind of addressing Nyla's issue of, I've made my complaint and I didn't hear anything back, or it's taken too long, we might want to establish some sort of service level.
Have you heard a request from other clients for that element in your agreements?
We have not. It's something that I would be open to, but our policy through our own company, and I think I mentioned this in the staff interviews that I had, is we like to make sure that we're responding to everyone within 24 hours if it's not emergent. Obviously, if it's something that comes in and we need to respond right away, we're checking everything immediately. But depending upon the amount of workload we have coming in, we will respond to everyone within 24 hours and respond to their complaint by getting a notice out in the mail and addressing the complaint to see if it's valid. If it is, then responding with notice within that same week. So we try and keep our response time very quick, especially to time sensitive matters and seasonal weeds, that sort of thing, things that become a really big public nuisance to residents. But overall, we try and keep our response time really, really short.
Would you consider that putting that in the contract as like an addendum so that it's clearly defined?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be my only concern.
We also do have somebody always answering our phones as well. So when people are calling in, if myself or April is not available between regular business hours, 8 and 5 p.m., we will always have somebody available to answer the phone, take a message, take in a complaint, or talk with that resident.
Okay.
Todd.
We can see April, but if it's okay, I would like to hear from her. So this is my question, or request. Can you describe your style and approach to an average code matter?
I guess you have to also think of the residents. So you do have to be considerate, even just like she mentioned, weeds. There's a little leniency, but to an extent, you have to support the neighbors. They're people too. And, but you also understand there may be a reason they haven't mowed. So there's some flexibility. We do work with people as we're able, but at some points, sometimes we kind of need to move forward. So there's leniency, but also following policy and procedure.
Can you just walk through the steps in an enforcement process?
Sure. I'm doing Windsor, as she mentioned. So on a weekly basis, I go to Windsor. They do kind of a proactive and reactive response, and I drive around. I look for things that are needing attention, or I'm following up on things that either have been complaints or we've been dealing with them for a couple weeks and we're just kind of following up. What are the progress? This was their deadline, so forth. I take pictures, kind of give my opinion and send it off to the team so that they can address it, write letters, those types of things, work with the residents and so forth. That's most
I
of
think, do I understand you put an identification on your vehicle or?
we can. Windsor is the only town that has offered that, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So they're the only ones. I believe all the other towns and villages are, they don't do that. It's up to you.
I predict a Facebook post wondering about the person taking pictures of an unidentified
Yeah.
vehicle. I do know that when they do send out written correspondence, you include the village's logo on that with yours, on the letterhead that goes out.
Yes. And I believe photos of the issue as well. Yeah.
Other questions? Erin?
Yeah, that answered one of mine. Just what education do we need to do so that people know this is legit and doesn't put you in a tricky situation more than your job is, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're co-branded then, is that? I just think that's a good idea.
I know Allison has actually been working with Windsor on this as well. Part of the transition period. Just they have as well not had enforcement as strong in the last couple of years. And so there were a lot of complaints and we kind of went in, and it also was June, which is like when everybody doesn't mow their yard quite yet. So it was quite busy. And you know, I think that the village residents were very confused as far as why are we getting these letters? Why are we getting door tags? Stuff like that. And so they got some calls kind of questioning that. And I know that they have, I think twice now, put an article in their newsletter just letting people know, hey, we hired this company and they're driving around and you're gonna hear from them. And if you have complaints, submit them here. So I do think if you have, you know, whether it be an email newsletter or a newsletter that's mailed to people, putting it on your village website, those things I think could be really helpful if you move forward.
And I expect it's something that we would work closely with Kaylin on, as a public education campaign.
Yeah.
I think they also included in their last one some of the common ordinances that are kind of creeping up. And so I think that was helpful too, as far as some of the.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like a great time for us to work on our education of a lot of these ordinances. I'll be curious, and maybe this is more of when we're getting reports of what's going on, but just being able to track, like, where are we finding them so that we know it's equally spread out in the village and it's not just like certain neighborhoods getting targeted or whatever, especially if it is like the same residents calling in. We don't necessarily want all your time just in like one area. So then it's whatever, but
You know, just from my experience, there definitely is some driving around, and there's sometimes you kind of start out in one area and then you get a complaint from another and you're like, okay, now I'm in this other area. And when you go back for follow-ups, you start really moving around, and there are some, you know, that you visit more because maybe they're you know, the subdivision they live in is not as nice as the other ones. Sometimes you see more complaints there. But you do get around.
yeah.
You
I would
eventually
just be
make your way
curious, like,
around everywhere.
I just want us to make sure like the services we're then buying, like contracting for the village, we aren't, you know, we're making sure that we're equally enforcing our
Yeah.
ordinances.
And one of my goals is to start using GIS more often and for more things. And one of the things that we would be doing is from a code enforcement perspective, would be putting that into a GIS database, and we can then, you know, either in our department updates or in our, what I want to do is kind of an annual year in review kind of document. Put that kind of information in there so you can see that we're not just targeting certain areas, that we're really taking a holistic look at the community.
Awesome. And my last thing is more for Brian. There's nothing in this, right, that prohibits us from also enforcing our code?
I haven't actually looked at the agreement, been
Okay.
asked to look at the agreement yet. I mean, I certainly can, but
Okay. I just would want to make sure that we can as any good, like, so.
Ryan, I'd like to have you review the agreement.
We have our
Everyone stare at Brian while he reads the contract.
No, again, we're not.
Nyla
if-
had a question
Oh,
too.
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Just want to say that a lot of our staff deals with these every day. It's Bill and Tracy and Lauren and Todd. And it's very time consuming. So if all of these citizens who, you know, if there's an issue, if it can all go to one place and be handled by one group, I think it would be much more efficient and it would not be taking our staff away from their other responsibilities. So when you want the motion, I'll make the motion.
I was going to say, Nyla, would you like to make a motion?
A motion to direct staff to include in the 2025 budget proposal up to 20 hours of weekly code enforcement service and authorize the village administrator to execute a contract with Municipal Code Enforcement LLC if the final approved 2025 budget includes adequate funding.
Second,
All right, any discussion on the motion?
you bet.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
On the My Waunakee app, there is currently a report of concern, and I would suspect that that's probably where at least some things come from. How does that,
I didn't know the app was actually still alive.
well, I don't know, haven't done anything with it. I knew it was on my phone
I
and
was
I
saying
just
that-
clicked on it. I'm like, yep, it's still there.
Yeah, we discontinued use of the app due to frankly lack of community
Well, there we
buy-in
go.
to use. So I'm surprised it's
Laugh
actually,
user
I'm wondering if it is still there. I'll have to check myself.
It's still there and it still looks like it should
Should
do
report a
things.
concern and we'll find out.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
We've really worked to, instead of a separate app, we've worked to customize our website so it transitions to the different device that's being used. And that includes, our website includes reporting concern functionality. So we've taken that step using our website
Okay.
in different ways. But do try that. Let me know what happens.
Any other discussion?
I'll just report the concern that the app is still there. And
All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming tonight. All right. I have to make sure to weed my yard. All right, here we go. Item number.
Bill's not gonna get cookies anymore after enforcing code.
No, well, we should just bring Bill cookies anyway. Yeah. So.
You know what I'm talking about.
All right, discussion and possible action on a recommendation to contract with Dane County Planning and Development to update the housing chapter of the village's comprehensive plan. This is to you, Lauren.
So with some extra funding that they've received, Dane County Planning Division is offering a technical assistance program for municipalities in Dane County who are seeking to update the housing element of the local comprehensive plan, which is separate from but related to the recent regional housing strategy that came out. Kind of taking a very local focus to that, where that's a very regional look. How could the regional housing strategy work in your community kind of thing? And how can you take pieces of it and make it work for you? In addition to that, the new Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority programs that are aimed at addressing housing affordability require a comprehensive plan housing element that's been updated within the past 5 years. Ours was last updated in 2017 when the plan was adopted as a whole. Since then, it's obviously more than 5 years old. the population has also increased by over 20%. I think we're sitting somewhere around 23.5% since 2017 in population increase. And hundreds of new homes have been built. So the current comprehensive plan doesn't reflect the current realities of the community. At the same time that Dane County brought this forward to us, we were already considering putting in the budget funds for a new comprehensive plan to be done in 2025, which would include an updated housing element. And so we're kind of at this crossroads. So it's unlikely that a new full comprehensive plan, if we started January 1st, it wouldn't be done until early 2026. Whereas this updated section would be done approximately 6 to 12 months from now, according to the estimates that we got from Dane County Planning. We brought it to Plan Commission. They asked quite a few good questions. One of them specifically was, do we have anything in the pipeline that would qualify for one of these WIDA products that we need to have this updated housing element? And the answer at the time is no. It doesn't mean that something won't come up, but we currently don't have any affordable housing developments that qualify for these WIDA products. So what we really need to do right now is weigh the potential timeliness of a new housing element versus kind of the more completeness of having it done as a complete village comprehensive plan update, where it's done in coordination with the transportation element, the economic development element, all of the other 11, I believe, elements it is that go into the comprehensive plan. So that's kind of where the discussion is. What we're looking for is, do we go for this potentially earlier update and then have to re-update it with the new comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so I'll open discussion. Robert had emailed about interest in it. Joe, you had expressed during Plan Commission some interest in looking at this. We had a discussion at CDA about could we do the elements of this that wouldn't be duplicated immediately with a comp plan update. And so from my perspective, I think there's a lot of value in working with the county on this. They have some funding to do this, so this isn't money out of our pocket. But if we can go back and negotiate with them so that we are not doing the public engagement portion that we're going to turn around to do again with the comp plan and risk wearing people out in terms of taking 2 surveys in 1 year or confusion over that, or doing the focus groups and the meetings that are really essential to a good comp plan, that public input is really valuable. If we can do that and maybe ask them to, take a facilitation approach with our different groups, update our documents, short of the survey that they proposed and the focus groups, and they had a charrette thrown in there. I'm doing 3 charrettes this fall, so I'm charrette burned out personally, and they're a lot of work. But if we can do those and then save that heavier public engagement for comp plan when it's important, that, and still use our planning firm, whoever we choose to go with for the comp plan, to do that heavy lifting so that it is indeed comprehensive. I think that's something worth exploring, but probably a second conversation with the county to see what they can modify or what they would be willing to modify. So I'll open it with that.
Yeah.
Sam.
I like what you're suggesting. Obviously, there's a lot of things in here, it is a 2-page document, important to keep in mind. I am skeptical for one reason. This is a joint village town document. And as we know, our relationship with the town, I'm just gonna say this, it's not the greatest right now. We don't know if it's gonna continue as a joint plan, or we're gonna do our own plan or whatever. And there are town things in here. Are they gonna be okay with that? Are we gonna do it separately? How is that gonna tie in with it? That would really be the only concern that I would have.
Yeah, I've had some initial conversations with the town chair about, and we'll have a meeting scheduled this fall to talk about if we are doing a single joint comprehensive plan or if we are planning separately.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the merits of each community planning separately. We're just at that point.
Mhm.
And I think the term that I last used when we were discussing is parallel play.
Yeah.
Like we're both in the same sandbox and we're planning and we're one community, 2 different municipalities.
Yeah.
but.
As long as we're not
yeah.
upsetting
Yeah.
the town with that and, you know, there's more clarity on that. I don't have a problem with it. But there's a lot of things in here that we've changed. You know, we don't have the 75-25 in the ordinance anymore and so forth. That it would make sense to have that matching, just like with the code enforcement people that were here, matching what the ordinances actually say. But no, I don't really have a problem with it.
Aaron,
I think we should go ahead. I didn't even think about that, so I guess that I want us to make sure we approach that respectfully. I also feel like it's our obligation to make sure that we're prepared if there are affordable housing projects or projects that want to use that. I think putting it off completely is just not respectful to us also saying we're committed to helping ensure we have access to affordable housing. We're not sure we'll even get in. Is that my understanding of this? It's first come, first serve, so.
It's first come, first serve, but we've already initiated those conversations with the
Okay.
county.
Okay. So I guess I would think we should take advantage of this opportunity. Yeah, so that we stay on the first come, first.
Nyla.
I agree with Aaron and Sam, and I think the more information we have, the better, so that we can serve the residents of Waunakee as well as the businesses, because we know that for the businesses to be able to flourish, they need help. They need, and in order for them to have workers, we need to have housing for them. So, and we also want to be part of the larger community, the county. We want to work together so that we can come up with a total housing plan to do the best we can for the future needs.
Excellent. Joe.
I'm gonna go in an entirely different direction here. I want to make sure we're following process. So this went to Plan Commission. Plan Commission did not refer it back here. So I want to make sure that us taking this up here is okay. I'm assuming it is,
Yes, it is.
but okay. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't crossing a line someplace there. In light of that, I think the price is right. We'll just leave it at that.
Robert.
So yes, I did ask for this to get discussed here because I did attend Plan Commission and I was concerned that we wouldn't even have the conversation at this level. So I'm not sure if the intent was ever to bring it here or if it was because I asked for it to be on the agenda. So that was when it comes to process, that I was the requester. So few thoughts. One, I'm unfortunately read the comp plan so many times that there are parts of it that I'm pretty sure I can recite in my sleep at this point. So I've been looking at it for years since we did the housing study. We are in a housing crisis. This is very well known. We've all received the report from the county at this point. We know Waunakee has a role to play in this. We are one of the larger municipalities within the county. I think, we definitely need to show leadership in this by going into this study because we need to show that we are a participant within the county. We do catch a lot of flack for our non-participation in other programs. So I think even from an intergovernmental standpoint, it's important. I was thinking about, Sam, your comments about with the town. I mean, this doesn't really run too afoul of the housing chapter of the comp plan. I mean, we do contemplate in there that we want to have people with different income needs. That was an agreed shared concept. That's generally what this report is, aiming to look at. I will say, I guess where I just don't really agree with the public engagement. My concern is if we don't have the public engagement is that we're going to get accused of doing something that we didn't give the public a proper chance to weigh in on. I get that feedback from time to time where it's like, well, you decided for me, I didn't get a chance to say it. I understand, I absolutely understand that there is concern of burnout because then we would turn around and do the rest of the comp plan a year after, but I feel like if we don't give people the proper opportunity to weigh in, we're not going to get any buy-in from the community for the changes that we may see come out of this. It would just look like we're just forcing it upon those that are in the community.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I need to clarify. I mean, if you actually are gonna, as I understood this, it's good to get technical assistance to get information. To the extent, and so it's essentially a contract between the village and Dane County. To the extent that then you are going to pursue amendments to the comprehensive plan, you would have to take it through Plan Commission. And I just want to make sure, like, the meeting that you had last week would not be sufficient for purposes of amending the comprehensive plan. And just to answer Joe's question about process, I think you can go ahead and do something with Dane County to gather the information. But if you actually are going to update the comprehensive plan, you're going to have to go through all the statutory processes to do that, which is going to include the Plan Commission.
And you're hitting on,
That a requirement of the technical assistance?
I think I would view this as you're gathering, maybe I misunderstood what was going to happen here. The gathering information that you would then utilize to potentially amend your comprehensive plan. I think that you as a village board can decide that you want to do that with Dane County without having a recommendation from the Plan Commission. To the extent that you are then going to pursue an amendment to the comprehensive plan, that would absolutely need to require the Plan Commission involvement and whatever statutory requirements, there are to amend the comprehensive plan. We'd also have to follow those too.
Yeah, so I'll speak from personal experience when I've done technical assistance in this fashion that is not related to a comp plan update. So when I'm out on on the job, and we're not advocating for, or we're not participating as a consultant in updating the comp plan, we often view this, and this is my question back to the county, as preparation for the comp plan. Like, you do an activity like this where you're looking at all your demographic data and your census data and what your trajectory is as a community. The survey is very much identical to what they would do for a comp plan, but only a portion of that. This is my bread. I do a lot of these. I feel, that activity in getting us prepared to go into the comp plan process with that much more in-depth education about housing allows us to be a much better educated consumer as a village for the comp plan services that we know we're going to contract in 2025, 2026. But I would not be comfortable if we were going to go through this with the specific goal of using this process to recommend changes to the comp plan and then come right on the heels of that with our comp plan update. Those two processes will inevitably conflict with one another. It doesn't mean that we don't understand what changes we might want to make, and we would have much more in-depth conversations about that over a longer period of time. But I wouldn't want to engage in a conversation that then preempts the comp plan, because that is just a much bigger process. So that would be my
From a
personal-
timing perspective, there is a little bit of a concern that some of it would be happening in parallel.
Mhm.
So where this is a 6 to 12-month process, if we're budgeting for a comprehensive plan, you want that to start pretty early in the year so that your engagement happens usually during the summer and fall, when you can take advantage of community events and school events where you can meet the people where they are. If that's the case and we were to sign a contract with Dane County and they got started tomorrow, we're still looking at 3 to 9 months of overlap, where it would be happening at the same time as our comprehensive plan. And so that's where some of the concern comes in, is that this would be happening kind of separate from the comprehensive plan, as opposed to one of the required elements of a full comprehensive plan update, which we're planning on doing.
Do we know if they're willing to modify the technical assistance, or is it
I was at a
year-
conference at the end of last week, so I didn't get a chance to ask Dane County after CDA, but it's on my list.
so I was still
Mhm.
asking questions when we went off on the.
Sorry,
slide.
yeah,
So-
offering some clarity.
Well,
least that's what I was-
I mean, the where I was going with this and ask the question, and this does go back to the Plan Commission, is that for whatever reason, the Plan Commission seemed pretty opposed to this based off of the comments that were made there. And so my concern is that if we wait, we risk losing out on available funds from WIDA, correct? Is that a true, false statement?
Not necessarily. So the WIDA funds are available. Some of them are only available to communities of less than 10,000 people. So we don't qualify for those.
Yeah.
But other ones are for, like, there's an infrastructure for affordable housing loan, but the affordable housing project has to already be in place to take advantage of the loan program. And we don't have anything that far along in the process, or even at the beginning of the process, to say that we would be within the next 6 to 12 months be taking advantage of these WIDA products.
But that there's also in the added, and you have to have your updates done within the past
5 years.
5 years, which
Yep.
we currently do not qualify for because we updated in 2017.
Correct.
So
And this is a point of clarity again, I mean, I do this for a living. The updates we can actually do internally. The statutory updates are not that.
They don't
complicated.
define what update means. You just have to update it.
I understand this, but again, my concern as a trustee is that the Plan Commission has openly displayed an unwillingness to make any changes. In fact, they're still attempting to
As a point of
negotiate. I'm sorry, I'm
order, as a point of
Call
order,
point of
they
order,
have
please,
not,
first.
well, point of order. As a point of order, they have not expressed a unwillingness to make changes. They have expressed an unwillingness to duplicate efforts. And that's a very different thing. They are
I-
very much open to change.
I would,
Back
res-
to
I
you.
would, I would, to the chair, I would disagree because of the comments made. They're still attempting to litigate ordinances that are long past. So I have concern as a trustee that the Plan Commission would not take this up without having appropriate third-party evidence. So they aren't going to necessarily agree with comments that are given from trustees. They would have to then disprove that something from an outside source, which we need all the information we can get on that, because if some of those plan commissioners will still be in the Plan Commission when we move in the Plan Commission, some of us electeds, it's not guaranteed that we will still be under, but those plan commissioners will remain. So the reality is that unless we start engaging in some activities, which if it is in parallel, and I know that that's a risk, I mean, it supplements the information to put on there. So I think that again, housing's a crisis. We're behind the wheel. We put ourselves in this situation by not taking more appropriate proactive action as a board. And I think that it behooves us to just go with it as is. I get it that this is your day job. I understand that you've made this very clear. This is your day job. You understand that there will be burnout from this. However, there are also people that are tired of the village not taking serious efforts on this. They're burnt out on having to drive to surrounding municipalities to get everything that they need. So I honestly, as a trustee, again, with respect to the Plan Commission, one moment, I'm almost finished. I would still think that we need to look at moving forward with this as presented, understanding that it will be a little difficult, but sometimes some of the best things you have to do take a little bit of extra work.
So driving, just to address some of the points you raised, driving to other communities to get the things they need is not something that is addressed by housing. This is a housing focus.
Point of order, do you have evidence to back that up? Because we know that they can't get workers to do some of these jobs, to work within the village to do this. So is this just your opinion that you're saying?
No, your point seemed tangential to housing. If residents are driving elsewhere to get the things they need, I'm assuming they're not driving. elsewhere.
Density, housing, and availability of services is driven by businesses' ability to make sales to people that are near them.
Yes,
If
and
we would
also
like to
for
get
the
pedantic.
business, well, and if you'd like to get pedantic, it's also the business mix that chooses to locate in town. So, there's a lot that goes into that.
Attract them with houses.
And we have houses. We don't have the right mix of houses.
There you go.
But to your point, my point of contention, and you've kind of skirted it, is the public engagement portion of this. The census data, the updated tables, the information that we need to, be in good standing with our state requirement for affordability, all very achievable if we don't do the public engagement portion. The public engagement portion of it, and I assume you have not been, or perhaps you have been involved in comp plan updates, there's an enormous burden on both staff to participate in that and for community members to participate in that. And when we are listening to both the Plan Commission, many of whom, I think all of whom have been through this before, all but one, I think it behooves us to listen to that council, that public engagement is critical for that comp plan to represent what the community wants. And that includes everything: housing, business development, road development, all of that. If we are engaging in something that is going to reduce our public engagement, isn't it worth a conversation with the county to say, can we do this? And what can we get out of this if we decide we don't want to do the survey? If we decide we don't do focus groups, because we're going to be doing that literally within the same season. That is my position. I don't know that we're going to agree on that, but who would, and let's ask.
And
who
is
are-
it- I will say, one of the issues that Plan Commission brought up, and I do think it's a very valid one, is that, as you have both alluded to, housing isn't just housing, it's economic development, it's transportation, it's utilities. And those are all elements of a comprehensive plan. And because they're so interconnected, that's one of the reasons why Plan Commission wanted to wait until there was a full update of the comprehensive plan, because of the interconnected nature of all of those elements that are required of a comprehensive plan. And so I don't necessarily think it was an unwillingness to change or amend something. I think it was more of a wanting to see it done as a complete project.
Thank you. Nyla?
I feel that the more information we have from more sources, the better. I worked on the housing task force. Quite frankly, I've been disappointed with it. I'm very happy with the Housing Betterment Fund. It's fine, something's finally coming from the Housing Task Force project. It seems like we did the Housing Task Force project. We sat on it, the village sat on it. And then COVID hit, it got set on some more, and then it got set on some more. And things are slowly, very slowly moving. And I would come to the CDA after being on the Housing Task Force. And this was before I was on the board. The CDA was doing the same process that the Housing Task Force did. And I was like, this has been done once. Why are we doing this again? I don't know what the reason was, but that's how I'd stall. I'd stall doing something that way. By doing the process over again, I saw it as a stall. Maybe I'm saying something too strongly. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But quite frankly, housing has stalled and stalled and stalled. Not housing, not upper income housing. It's flourishing. The housing for workers is non-existent. And the housing that is in town, the lower priced housing, we've been priced out of it. And the taxes keep going up. So I'd like to know what Waunakee is going to do when we don't have workers and somebody who lives high on the hill has a plumbing problem and their sewer's backing up and they can't find a plumber because nobody lives in town because they've moved to where they can drive a shorter distance to take care of the needs of and service the people who are closer to where they live. Those are just some of my thoughts, but I just feel that this housing issue goes on and on and on, and we don't accomplish anything.
Well, this is an issue across the state, and we have a report that was prepared and distributed in July to the CDA that outlined exactly what we've done. It's not, I'll be honest, in completely readable form. But Lauren, would you mind forwarding to that? And I will send the PowerPoint that we'll be going over in October so we can see recommendation by recommendation what's been accomplished over the last few years. When you look at housing across the state, since we began meeting in 2017, it has not gotten better anywhere. And we can talk about some of the reasons behind that are way beyond our control. Our workforce in 2009, after the housing crash, disappeared. People found better jobs, more lucrative jobs. We're not attracting young people to professions like drywalling or plumbing or anything like that anymore. So we have a huge workforce crunch that is exacerbating the problem, and it is exacerbating the problem in places like Waunakee even more. So I'd be more than happy if we wanted to have somebody come in and talk about kind of some of the external factors that are complicating that process. But in the meantime, we can share what the CDA has been doing. The CDA, I think, has been doing a good job. I don't want to slam the work that they've been doing. They've been working for years to move the needle on a problem that is, it's not just statewide. We're talking about it in our current presidential election cycle. So let's at least give them some credit for the hard work that they've been doing. With that, our issue here is do we move forward with the county? And absent the public engagement portion, which is duplicative, could we bring, I don't know, would Olivia be willing to come and talk to us next month about what this would look like and what the output would look like? The information we would get is incredibly rich. It's going to allow us to understand housing better, and it will prepare us to go into the comp plan as much more educated and better equipped elected officials. It doesn't mean that we're not doing the public engagement. That will come as part of the comp plan. It just means we're not doing it twice, and that when we're doing it in a much more comprehensive way. Is that something we'd be willing to talk to the county about?
I asked,
Mhm.
Lauren, what's the timeline for this? Is there a timeline for which the village needs to apply?
Sooner is definitely better than later, because even though we've already initiated those conversations, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily holding a place for us. The other concern I would have with holding it off for a month, and I'm sure Olivia would be more than happy to come and talk. I've told her to her face before, it's fine. The longer we wait on this, the closer we push it to the exact same timing of it happening during the comprehensive plan. So in my history of working on comprehensive plans in Wisconsin, the first thing you do is update the demographic data and the housing data. And if we're looking at starting a comprehensive plan update in probably before the middle of March next year, we would be doing this housing plan at the same time we would be doing the comprehensive plan. And so we'd basically be having two consultants working on the same thing. So that's one concern that I would have if we do push it off any farther.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd just like to make one comment. It would be interesting to see how the two plans come out. If they come out with the same information, or if the information, how it differs.
If we're just talking about updating the quantitative data in the housing element of the plan, it would be exactly the same, because we would be using the same exact data sources.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to move forward with engaging Dane County for technical assistance on updating comprehensive plan housing chapter update, contingent upon removal of the public engagement portions of the agreement. If such agreement cannot be completed, then it would return to the village board for further discussion.
I'll
I'll
second
second
that. All right.
Go ahead.
I'll second it. So, good discussion, loud discussion. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you guys for the good conversation. All right. What else have we got?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.